Hello, welcome to our special program Meet the Envoy. In this program, we invite envoys of different countries. Today, we are very honored to have our special guest, Robert Dixon, newly appointed British High Commissioner to Bangladesh. Let's talk with him. Hello, Robert Dixon. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Yeah.
And welcome to DBC television. At first, I want to ask you something that since it is your first assignment in Bangladesh as High Commissioner, let me ask you, what was your impression about Bangladesh before coming to this country and how is it now? Is there any change?
Well, I've been looking at Bangladesh. In fact, I came here 10 years ago on a brief visit, and I was very pleased to be coming back. It's a posting and an assignment that I had always wanted, so I'm thrilled to be here. And I think the thing that has surprised me the most, I expected to get a warm welcome, and I've had a very warm welcome, but the thing I have been most surprised about is the development in the 10 years since I was last here, the extent to which the economy has developed, the extent to which Bangladesh has been tackling many of the serious development issues, and I think you can see all that in the way that Bangladesh is about to graduate from LDC to MIC status, and also the real sort of pride and self-confidence that I think is in this country, and which I'm sure we'll see demonstrated very fully during the 2021 50th anniversary celebrations, which I think are going to be a really exciting moment for Bangladesh to celebrate the success that it's had as an independent country, which has been remarkable. And what I'm very keen is that the British presence here should reflect the role that Britain played in 1971 and the role that we've played in the 50 years since then.
So, being a strong, you were talking about our development, our visions 2021, 2041. So, being a strong development partner, how much British government can help us to attain the goal?
Well, I think we can help a lot. We have a very large development program here. But I think the thing I'm most struck by is the way in which Bangladesh is not in any way a development-dependent economy. And one of the things that has really struck me since I've been here has been the incredible vitality and strength of the private sector, which I think was something I didn't fully expect. So there's a challenge in that for us. Bangladesh exports to the UK $4 billion a year of goods. Obviously, ready-made garments are a big proportion of that. And we in the UK export to Bangladesh about $420 million. So it's a trade deficit of roughly 10 to 1 in Bangladesh's favour. And I'm hoping that as Bangladesh becomes a richer and more developed economy, Britain, British companies, British goods can play a bigger part in that commercial relationship so that we move from a development relationship to a fully fledged economic trading relationship during the next 3 or 4 years while I'm here.
Well, Mr. Robert, what will be the impact of Brexit in UK-Bangladesh relationship?
Well, to be honest, Brexit obviously is a hugely significant moment for the UK. In many ways, I think it's a very good time to be here with the job of promoting the relationship between the UK and Bangladesh, because part of the urge behind Brexit is for us to be more of a player on the global stage. For the last 44 years, we've seen ourselves as a European country, and of course we will still have a very close partnership with Europe, but Brexit gives us the opportunity and the need to develop partnerships with wider countries on the world stage. And if you're looking at countries which are becoming more important on the world stage, Bangladesh is clearly one of them. 8th largest population in the world, growing at 8% a year, and an economy which is, as I said, moving from LDC to MIC status. That's an enormously interesting partnership for us because it's good for Bangladesh, but also we think it's, from a purely selfish point of view, good for us in Britain as well.
So let me ask you about the global concern, terrorism. While the entire world is concerned about terrorism, maybe you have observed that Bangladesh government has taken some steps to control, to fight against terrorism. How do you evaluate the role of Bangladesh government controlling terrorism, militancy and extremism?
Well, I think it's been very successful. The last time there was a major terrorist attack here was in 2016 in July, in the Holy Bakery attack, which caused a massive a real problem of confidence in the international community. I'm very struck coming here now by how confident people are that the problem has been contained. But tragically, we've been reminded in Sri Lanka just last week that these problems can be brewing when you're not expecting them. And I note, of course, that there was an action this morning by the government against clearly something was going on there. And so I think it's one of those issues where the price of success is constant vigilance. No one can relax their guard. We've had terrorist attacks in the UK in the recent past, terrible attacks in Sri Lanka, potential attacks here. The threat level is quite high all over the world. So I think, we can be pleased. I think the government should be pleased by what it's achieved here. But at the same time, no one can afford to relax because, as we've seen in the Middle East, as we've seen in South Asia, we've seen in Christchurch, New Zealand, this is a problem with many forms, and it's one that you can never afford to relax your guard against. And we are partners with Bangladesh in that effort.
That's a great concern in these days. So as this is a global and transnational problem, do you have any plan to enhance cooperation between UK and Bangladesh to fight this menace?
Well, it's going on already. We've been doing, we have a lot of work between our governments, making sure that the right parts of government whose responsibility to deal with these things are properly joined up. And as High Commissioner, one of the things I need to always do is make sure that cooperation is taking place. But we
what
also
sort of cooperation?
Cooperation between the parts of government who have responsibility for dealing with these issues. But what we also do is work on the preventing violent extremism side because, as our Prime Minister says, this is not a problem you can arrest your way out of. What you need to do is try and stop people from wanting to become terrorists in the first place, and that means addressing grievances, pointing out to people how, more productive narratives, more productive ways of living their lives. And we've got a lot of cooperation in that space. And I've no doubt that we will continue to have that, and I'll be looking as High Commissioner at ways we can enhance that and do even more together.
So how do you evaluate the role of Bangladesh in managing religious harmony?
Well, I'm very impressed. Bangladesh is obviously a country with a long tradition of religious harmony. I personally went to church on Easter Sunday, and I was talking to the people in and around the church afterwards, and they said they lived very comfortably, they operated very comfortably as a religious minority in the context of a country which has always been very clear that it values religious diversity and looks after religious minorities. So I think it's a good story here.
But recently BBC aired a program on persecution on religious minorities, including Christian communities, as we were talking, quoting an article published in a British newspaper where the speaker cited Bangladesh as an example where ruling party is persecuting on the Christian minority. Perhaps you have seen that or you know about it. Do you believe anything as such exists in Bangladesh? Do you find anything as such so far?
Well, the honest answer, of course, the BBC is editorially independent, so what individual commentators, I know that I have seen the clip you're referring to, what the commentator said is his own business and the business of the BBC editorially. I would just note that it bears no relation to my own experience in Bangladesh. I've met people from many different communities since I've been here, from the Ahmadi community, from Shia communities, from Christian communities and from Hindu communities. And it seems to me that one of the great things that Bangladesh can offer the world and the region is an example of how people from all religions can live together. And the way I've heard it put officially is that religion is a private matter. People can have whatever religious practice they wish to follow, they can follow. But it's not reflected in the wider approach that the government takes, where people are dealt with as equals. And it seems to me that in a world which is becoming increasingly polarized and where increasingly extreme positions are coming to the fore in all sorts of shocking ways, that's an incredibly good position to take. And I hope, I have no doubt, I'm sure, confident that Bangladesh will continue to demonstrate that religious tolerance, because it's a really important example at a difficult time for the world.
That's great. Thank you very much. Let's talk about Rohingya issue, a big concern from Bangladesh. On sheltering Rohingyas in Bangladesh, UK has already appreciated the role of Bangladesh and extended substantial financial and political support. But yet, permanent solution is a long way to go. What do you think, how your government can help us or cooperate us to achieve a permanent solution?
Well, the permanent solution is clearly that the Rohingyas should return to to their ancestral home, if you like, which is inside Myanmar. And we've been very clear that what needs to happen is that conditions need to be created where the dignified, safe, voluntary return of the Rohingyas can be taken forward. But clearly that's going to take some time. We are pressing Myanmar, including in the Security Council, where we're what's called the pen holder for the work that's done in the Security Council. We are trying to make sure that those who are responsible for the crimes that were committed against the Rohingya are held to account. So we're very strong political supporters of Bangladesh's view, but as I say, it's not something that's going to happen quickly, because there is now a totally separate conflict taking place in Rakhine that has nothing to do with Rohingyas, but makes the whole area clearly unsafe for people to return in the short term. So that brings us on to the second thing that we're doing, which is to support the incredibly generous response of the government of Bangladesh, for which Bangladesh, I would say, has received worldwide respect and acclaim. I mean, it's recognised that this was an incredible act of generosity by Bangladesh in allowing in another wave of Rohingyas in addition to the people who were here from previous waves of persecution. And we have provided a lot of finance, so we've provided £129 million so far for the humanitarian response. I think it's likely we'll be providing more. Our ministers will be giving details on that in the near future. And we are trying to make sure, working with our friends in the government of Bangladesh, that while the people are here, they have the ability to earn a living, that the children have the ability to be educated, not as a way of anchoring them in Bangladesh, but so that when conditions are right in Rakhine, they can return home, with more education and with skills and with livelihoods. So it seems to us that is the priority now. One priority is about helping them to return when they can, when it's dignified, safe, voluntary. The other priority is making sure that they're properly looked after in the camps, which is happening, but it's making sure that they have the right things that they need to live a dignified life in the camps for as long as they need to be in Bangladesh, working, as I said, and recognising also, I should say, on that there are 350,000 people living in the area. 1 million Rohingyas are now living there as well. This obviously creates massive pressures on the host community, so we're making sure that our support goes to the host community as well as to the Rohingyas, because we recognise that a big part of the sacrifice that's been made has been made by the people who were living in the area before the Rohingyas arrived, and they need to be supported too.
So, Mr. Dixon, what is your plan? I mean, the plan of UK government to prevent genocide in Myanmar, as you were talking about Myanmar's genocide?
Well, I didn't use the word genocide on Myanmar. I think what I would describe it as a terrible crime or series of crimes that's been committed against the Rohingya. And what we're trying to do is to do two things. As I said, one is to create conditions so that they can return. There is actually a plan on the table. So Kofi Annan, the late Kofi Annan, the very widely respected former Secretary General of the United Nations, before he died, led a mission to Rakhine, which created what we think is a good plan, which would provide stability, safety, and economic livelihoods for the Rohingyas if they can return. So there is a plan on the table. But as I said, conditions in Rakhine are unlikely in the near term to allow that plan to be implemented, but it's there, and we would like to see it implemented as soon as possible. But in the meantime, the Rohingyas need to be supported to live lives in the camps which don't involve them wasting away, mean that the adults are able to earn a living and contribute, and the children get the education that they need so that they can pursue lives when they return to Myanmar.
So, Your Excellency, we know that freedom of expression, let's talk about this. Freedom of expression is always an important issue to your government and in United Kingdom. Moreover, World Press Freedom Day is being observed on 3rd May, as we know. What's your observation about Bangladesh media ahead of the observance?
Well, it's very interesting. I think I'd put this at sort of three levels, if I could. At the top level, I mean, I know there's a very long Bengali tradition of debate, argument. I think it's a wonderful tradition. It very much reflects tradition in the UK, that people work through issues by talking about them, by arguing, by disagreeing, and then they end up with a consensus. And that seems to me to be a very robust way to conduct. That's how you work your way through to the right answer in any sort of political question. So I think there's a very strong Bengali tradition, which I hope will be maintained. Below that, I think there's clearly an awful lot of media. I mean, I'm extremely impressed by what I've seen at DBC News Television this morning.
Thank you very much.
Huge capability
That's
here.
great.
I know that there are a very large number of newspapers. I mean, I read lots of them every day. I gather there are 550 around the country. So there is clearly, in many ways, there is a very capable media sector here. But what I'm also told, or we are told by practicing journalists, is that sometimes they feel that their freedom is constrained, that there are things that they don't think they can report on. They are aware of pressure on them. And I think what I would observe is that for any democracy to really flourish and function properly, the media has a really critical role. And it's very important as Bangladesh moves from least developed to middle-income country status and becomes a mature economy, a mature democracy, that the media is able to play its role in helping to hold the government to account, to challenge, and to be part of the great debate which any democracy conducts with itself all the time. And if you start to exclude the media from that or constrain the media's ability to play that role, then you start to undermine the foundations of democracy itself. So Press Freedom Day is a very good time to be celebrating these things. I would note that in the recent survey that was put out by a group called Reporters Without Borders, who monitor press freedom around the world, Bangladesh came in at 150, which, I was actually, to be honest, surprised, because there is in many ways a very lively media here, but I think there's a challenge in that. And it would be very good to see the media and the government in Bangladesh work together to try and move Bangladesh up that ranking, because it seems to me that we're not really where Bangladesh should be. And I just mentioned, while we're on press freedom, that we have a conference. This is an issue that the British government takes very seriously. And we are convening a major international conference on press freedom in July in London, which we very much hope there will be a significant Bangladeshi representation at, which I hope would include members of the government, but would also include media practitioners in Bangladesh who can give the reality of life for people who are media practitioners like yourself here in Bangladesh.
So, do you have any suggestion towards the development of free press and democratic institutions in Bangladesh?
Well, I think what's important is that the form and the reality meet, because obviously clearly there's a constitution here which sets out very admirable democratic practice. There is a commitment to press freedom on all sorts of levels. And I think what's important is that the lived reality of meets up with reflects the aspiration that's in the constitution. So, clearly that means the opposition party is able to do its job, or opposition parties, plural, are able to do their job as the opposition. It means that the media is able to reflect the reality of democratic debate. It means that institutions are held to account. So if there's corruption, if there are institutions not doing their job, that can be made clear by transparency. Media has a big role to play in that, of course. So it's really the whole thing functioning as it's intended. And in many ways, I think that does happen in Bangladesh, but I think there are aspects, as the Reporters Without Borders survey would indicate, where perhaps the practice and the reality need to be brought together a little more evidently.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dixon. I appreciate you. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's all from Meet the Envoy. Thank you very much for being with us.